quarter, for the fall quarter. So as you see on the screens behind me and in front of you, we will begin today in earnest a study on the minor prophets. The minor prophets. So I am curious, by show of hands, I am curious if any here or those participating online, raise your hands if you have spent time studying the minor prophets in your life. If you've spent, significant time studying the minor prophets, raise your hand. We got a few. So I'm going to tell you, I have not. Have I ever studied any of the minor prophets? Yes. Have I studied all of them? No. And I said, you know what? I think we should dig into this a little bit, right? Sometimes there are those books that are part of the canon of Scripture. We know they're there, but we don't always focus on them like we might others. And I believe that God has those there for a reason too. So I said, you know what? I think it'll be worth our time to study the minor prophets. So we're going to do that starting today. I'm not sure how far we will get today, but I want to make sure that we take the step together. So I'm not going to rush today, and I won't rush through the next several weeks, but I want to make sure that we share the same understanding about what we have. So let me start with just some very, very basic background information that is intended to help us sort of level the playing field, and again, so we can share the same understanding. First of all, as we think about the minor prophets, here's a very, very quick and brief overview. First thing, the minor prophets, there are 12 of them, and they make up the collection of the last 12 books of the Old Testament. The last 12 books of the Old Testament capture what's regarded as the collection of minor prophets. So what is the last book of the Old Testament? What's the last book? Malachi. So if you go to Malachi, that would be 1, and count 11 back. Start at Malachi and count 11 back. You will land at Hosea. And from Hosea to Malachi, those and everything in between makes up the collection of books that are regarded as the minor prophets. So that's the first thing that I want us to know. The second thing I want us to know in terms of overview is that the designation minor is based on the amount of material that those men wrote, not based on the importance of that material. That is very important to know that. When we have minor prophets and major prophets, the major ones aren't more important than the minor ones. The major ones, Jeremiah, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, they wrote a whole bunch. So they're the major prophets. But the minor prophets, some of them only have, by our standard of reckoning, 1 chapter. Some might only have 3 chapters. They didn't write a whole bunch. So they're called minor based on the amount that they wrote, not based on their importance. Third overview point that I want to share here in this moment is that it is very difficult to pinpoint the chronological order of these writings. Now, yes, we have a list that takes us from Hosea to Malachi. I just want us to understand that as they appear in the Old Testament, that is likely not the order which those men actually were inspired to write their writings. For the purposes of this class, for my learning and for yours, I thought it might help us to study these 12 books in chronological order. But I'm saying to you that even in my attempt to do that, scholars don't agree on the order. They come close, but there are real questions about the timing of Joel. There are real questions about the timing of Obadiah, for example. But for the purposes of this class, I had to decide on an order. I had to decide on something. So here's what I decided on based on what a good number of scholars believe. The first five will be in this order: Joel, Jonah, Amos, Hosea, and Micah. And then, if time permits, through the course of weeks, we'll also explore, in the order that you see in yellow there, Nahum, Zephaniah, Habakkuk, Obadiah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. This is the order that we will explore these, okay? And so again, I'll let that sit for a minute. If you just, I see some folks taking pictures of the slides, and that's fine. We can probably even send these out too. But for the purposes of our class over the next however many weeks, 12 weeks, I don't know, 14 weeks, I don't know how long we'll go. But I want to try to get as much of this as possible. And I just want to point out that part of why it's difficult to pinpoint the chronological order of the writings is because when these men were inspired to write, they did not always give us time stamps in their writing, or they didn't always give us explicit references to current events to really help us pinpoint what time in the events of the world that their writing was happening. We're just not completely sure about that, okay? Now, I'm going to put a timeline up on the screen. My next slide is going to be a historical timeline because I want to try to frame in your mind what time period during the world's history that these 12 men, these minor prophets, when they were inspired to write their writings. So I'm going to let your eye adjust to this, but I'm going to explain what all of this means. First of all, as you move from left to right, you are moving forward in history. And as you move from the right to the left, you are moving backwards in history. So in other words, the further left you go on this timeline, the older the time period is. Now, on the far right, you see the black cross there? And you see it says 33 AD, right? That's when we understand and believe that Christ was crucified, at 33 AD. And I'm just trying to show you, everything else is BC on this timeline. So I'm going to walk you through from left to right what this timeline represents. And let me stress to say, these are estimated, okay? It is estimated that from the period 1800 BC to 1400 BC, that is the rough time frame when the nation of Israel was in Egyptian bondage, okay? You flash forward just a little bit, and sometime during the 1300s BC is when Moses led them out of Egypt. You with me so far? You go forward a little bit more. In the 1000s BC is when the nation Israel was a united kingdom. There were 3 kings that reigned during the period when Israel was united, starting with Saul, then David, and then Solomon. You with me? All right, you go forward just a little bit more. You see those little wavy lines? Before, like you see the wavy line, 920, that wavy line means approximately. That's what the wavy line means. So approximately the year 920 BC is when the nation of Israel split into 2 kingdoms, a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom. Remember this? Okay, now you see my 2 green guard posts there, starting approximately 835 BC to 415 BC. You see those green guard posts, 835 to 415? It is in that period when it is estimated that the minor prophets wrote their writings. So notice the proximity to when the kingdom split. Not long after the nation of Israel's kingdom split into a northern kingdom and southern kingdom, not long after that did the minor prophets from Hosea to Malachi begin their prophetic writings. And then just to give you to sort of ground you, I'm showing you the proximity of that to Jesus' ministry on earth. That's why I showed you the 33 AD. Does this make sense so far? Good. We're doing this for a reason. Doing all this for a reason, I promise you, all right? Now, I'm going to put a map up on the screen because I want you to see some things about the northern and southern kingdom. Again, a key milestone in world history is when the kingdom split into a northern and southern kingdom, because it was not long after that, about 100 years or so after that, is when the minor prophets began their prophetic ministry. But let me show you this map here. Okay. The dark blue that's kind of in the center, I know you can't, the writing doesn't show up well. That is the northern kingdom of Israel. All right? And the star that you see in there, Samaria, that is the capital, or was the capital of the northern kingdom. The pink, not the red, but the pink that's just below it is the southern kingdom, which was called Judah, right? Right? 10 tribes. How many total tribes made up the nation of Israel? 12 tribes. 10 of them were part of the northern kingdom, and 2 of them were part of the southern kingdom, Judah, and the capital of Judah was Jerusalem. All right? Now, so when Saul and David and Solomon reigned, the northern and southern kingdom was one. They were united as one. But at some point in history, they split and became a northern and southern kingdom, each with their own kings. The northern kingdom had their set of kings. The southern kingdom, Judah, had their set of kings. Some of those men were faithful to God. Some of those men were not faithful to God. And as the faithfulness of that king went, so did the nation. If the king was faithful, the nation prospered. If the king was not faithful, the nation did not prosper. All right? So we're together. Northern kingdom, southern kingdom. I also want to point out to you, and again, I'm sharing this not because I want to have a geography class this morning or a history class. I'm sharing it because some of these places and situations will become important to us as we read about what these prophets prophesied about. So you see the northern kingdom of Israel, the southern kingdom of Israel. Let me also point out to you, you see here on this slide it says kingdom of Aram Damascus. Aram, some Bible translations use the term Aram, that is also Syria. This is important because there are going to be, over the history, there are some engagements between Syria and Israel. Syria and Judah, we're going to see that. So that is Syria, not to be confused with, if you look just north of that in the tan, you see where it says Assyrian Empire? That's a different place. It sounds similar. There is Syria and there is Assyria, but they are two different places, close in proximity, but this is important. Syria and Assyria, so I'm showing you where those are, and not, the final thing I'm going to show you here, not pictured on this map because I couldn't find a map that would fit all of this in one map and make it visible. To the east, it is not on this map, but I'm going to show you. To the east of all of this is a place called Babylon. You ever heard of that? Right. So to the east of Ammon that you see there in the orange is a place called Babylon. What I want you to understand, or what I want you to get from this map, is not just the proximity, but you have the northern kingdom, the southern kingdom, and the northern and southern kingdoms of Israel are surrounded by all of these heathen nations. You see that? The Phoenician states, Philistia, Syria, Assyria, Babylon, all of these heathen nations, Moab, Ammon, Edom, they all surround the nation of Israel. What could possibly go wrong? What could possibly go wrong where God's people are surrounded by all of these heathen nations? What could possibly go wrong, Coach? We'll find out as we continue our study. Let me take you back, though, to my timeline. Again, the green goalposts there represent the time period from 835 BC to 415 BC. In that period, approximately, is when those minor prophets had their prophetic ministries. And I'm going to put a circle around that because now my next slide is just going to expand or blow up just that time period from 835 to 415. Watch, it's going to make it bigger. 835 to 415. Now, when those men had their prophetic ministries, there are some world events that happened during the course of their ministry. Now, let me put my little map back up there again. All right, so on the right side of the screen, again, remember now, the dark blue is the northern kingdom, the pink below it is the southern kingdom of Israel, and then they have all these nations around. In the year 732 BC, approximately, the heathen nation Syria, teamed up with the northern kingdom of Israel to invade the southern kingdom. And you can read about that in 2 Kings chapter 16. World events. Also during the period of the minor prophets, around the year 725, the northern kingdom of Israel actually falls to the kingdom of Assyria. During that same time period, around 700 BC, Assyria invades the southern kingdom of Israel. You can read about that in 2 Kings 18. And finally, during this period of the minor prophets, for now I'm going to at least share, again, about 114 or so years later, the southern kingdom is exiled to Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar. You remember that? All right. All of that happened during the period of the ministry of the minor prophets. Are we together on this? All right, I know it's a lot of information. I don't have any more historical facts to share, but I'm just trying to ground us in what was happening in the lives of the nation when God called these prophets into ministry. I'm trying to help us see what was going on. The writings of the prophets, not just the minor prophets, all prophets, but the writings of the prophets provide us important glimpses into the mind and will of God. Even though they were part of the old covenant system, we can still study things about the things that the prophets prophesied about to understand things about the mind and will of God even today. Number two, the men who were called to be prophets were authorized spokesmen of God, and they were designated to reveal his will to his people. And these prophets commonly revealed things, and this is as important as anything, when they prophesied, not every time, but some of the time when they prophesied, they commonly revealed things through symbols and parables. And they also often revealed things or prophesied about things that were happening in their time, but that also had a double meaning for something that might also happen in the future. Very interesting. The way that the prophets would often work is that they would often have commentary about things that were happening then, but that had a double application to something that also would happen in the future. It's important for us to understand that as we try to understand their writings, okay? So, I want us then, we'll spend the rest of our time, remember, what was, I'm not going to put it back up here, what was sort of the major event that happened in the world and lives of the nation of Israel right before the minor prophets began? What was the thing that happened? Say it louder, sister, you got it. They split. The kingdom split into two. That was the major event I told you. Right around the year 920 BC, the kingdom split from a united kingdom to a northern kingdom and southern kingdom. And it was, Sister Iris is exactly right, that was a major event, and shortly thereafter, these men's prophetic ministry began. I want us to go back to Scripture and read about the circumstances of the kingdom splitting. And I need a few readers. I need about 3 or 4 readers to help us this morning. We're going to look at 1 Kings chapter 11 and 1 Kings chapter 12. Go ahead and make your way there. I want us to remind ourselves of the circumstances of the kingdom splitting. And I need about 3 or 4 volunteers to help read for us this morning. Who will help us out? All right, Jeff is 1, Mark is 2, Melissa's 3, and Jerry's 4. All right. Let me give you all your assignments then. Jeff will be first, Mark will be second. So you guys will share 1 Kings 11. Give me a second. And then Melissa and Jerry will share 1 Kings 12. 1 Kings 11, again, our purpose for reading these are to remind ourselves about what happened and why the nation of Israel split from a united kingdom under Saul, David, and Solomon to 2 separate kingdoms. All right, so 43 verses. All right, so Jeff, you're going to, if you don't mind, you're going to get us kicked off on 1 Kings 11. And if you don't mind, read the first 20 verses of that, please. Perfect. You did a great job on all those names that you had to read through too. Excellent. All right, so we're going to bring Mark in to read the second part of see the conclusion of this part of the story, at least in just a second. But I want to make sure that we're tracking here. Solomon is king in this moment that we're reading. It tells us that he has all of these wives, all of these concubines, and God had warned him that if you have these wives of women who are from these heathen nations, that is to say, if you take up with these non-Hebrew women, They are going to draw your heart away to other gods. And that's exactly what happened to Solomon. That's exactly what happened to Solomon. So in verse 11, it says, so the Lord said to Solomon, because you have done this, and you have not kept my covenant and my statutes, which I have commanded you, I will surely tear the kingdom from you and will give it to your servant. This is the reason that God was instituting this split or divided kingdom, because Solomon had fallen away. We together so far? Great. Mark's going to pick up in verse 21, and if you don't mind, sir, to the end of that chapter. Excellent. Great job on those names as well. So again, so here we are. I'm going to invite Melissa in a second to pick up in chapter 12 and read through verse 15, and then Brother Jerry will close out that chapter from 16 to 33. But before we do that, again, Solomon disobeyed God. God then made a vow that he was going to now tear the kingdom away from him, but not all of it, right? Because of his servant David, he left him. He left him two tribes, but the kingdom would be split. And sure enough, as it was said, it is happening and it is playing out. Do want to point out before we go on again, Kingdom of Edom, the southernmost part of this slide. I find it interesting, but I also find it that this is part of the mind of God. His servant Solomon was disobedient to him, and God raised up an adversary from a heathen nation to do his bidding. I want you to just think about that for a second. God's servant disobeyed him, and God raised up an adversary to punish him from a heathen nation. Okay? So the kingdom, we see evidence of it now. The kingdom is now being torn. 10 tribes in the northern part, that's the dark blue, and then the red just south of that, the southern kingdom, 2 tribes. Let's see the rest of the story. Melissa, chapter 12, 1 through 15, please. We got about 7 minutes left for class. Go ahead. Perfect. Brother Jerry? Perfect. All right, so we're at our end. Just want us to see as we close out our time this morning, the kingdom split. All right, and just as God said, as a punishment, right? We have a northern kingdom, southern kingdom. Solomon's son Rehoboam is the king of the southern kingdom. The kingdom of Judah. Jeroboam is the king of the northern kingdom. And already we see the northern kingdom, Jeroboam, are already making bad decisions. He's appointing men who are not supposed to be priests, that are not part of the tribe of Levi. He's making them priests. He created 2 golden calves as their so-called God, and on it goes. And so now we just have this situation. That is the precipitating event. The precipitating event that's right down in the center there around the year 920 when the kingdom split. And then about 100 or so years later is when the prophetic ministries of the minor prophets begin. So next week we will begin our study with Joel. It's only 3 chapters. If you have 30 minutes in your week, next week I want to invite you to spend time looking at Joel, all 3 chapters. And we'll look at what the prophet Joel has to say when his ministry begins. Thank you for the readers this morning. Thanks for your attention. We are dismissed.